I wish I could tell you this story starts with love. That I had the kind of son who brought me a cup of tea in the morning or asked how I was sleeping. But that's not the man who stood on the other side of the locked bathroom door that morning, shouting that I had 5 minutes to get out or he'd toss all my things out into the street. No, that was someone else entirely. That was my son, yes, but not the one I raised. Before we go on, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Hit that subscribe button, give this video a like if you've ever had to remind someone whose name is on the deed, and stay with me to the end. You won't believe how this turns out. Back to that morning. I was standing in the shower, rinsing the last bit of shampoo out of my hair when I heard a thud outside the door. Then another. Then the unmistakable sound of a zipper, my suitcase being dragged across the hardwood floor. That's when I realized he was serious. He was throwing me out. At first, I thought it was just one of his tantrums. My son Tyler had always been dramatic, but this felt different. The tone of his voice was sharp, almost rehearsed, like he'd been waiting for this moment. I opened the bathroom door, still dripping wet, barely managing to grab a towel before stepping out, and there it was. My suitcase, my purse, my phone, my clothes, all sitting outside the front door like I was some kind of unwelcome guest. "Tyler," I asked, my voice cracking, "what is this?" He didn't even look at me, just kept his arms crossed like a sulking teenager, which at 37 years old was impressive in the worst way. "I've had enough, Mom," he said. "This isn't working anymore. I can't live like this, with you using everything in this house like it's yours." I was speechless. "Bathroom's always occupied," he went on, like he was reading from a script. "You leave your stuff in the kitchen. You take over the laundry. I can't breathe in here with you always around." I stood there, stunned, the towel barely covering me, hair soaked, heart pounding like it was about to burst. Not because of the words, but because of the pure entitlement in his tone. That was the moment I realized my own son thought I was an inconvenience. In my own house. We'll back up a bit. 3 years earlier, Tyler had lost his job in Denver and asked if he could stay a few months with me until he got back on his feet. He was charming then, polite, even grateful, said it'd be temporary, just enough time to find something else. I gave him the master bedroom. I made space in the kitchen, bought his favorite snacks, even let him set up his gaming console in the living room. I was happy to help. What I didn't expect was that a few months would turn into years, and that somewhere along the way, he would begin acting like I was the one who overstayed my welcome. He never paid rent, never helped with bills. I still did his laundry half the time. And when I'd ask, gently, if he'd had any luck with jobs lately, he'd either deflect or lash out. "You think it's that easy, Mom? The market's brutal right now." But somehow, he always had money for takeout and gaming headsets. That morning, I stood outside the house, barefoot, barely covered, with the neighbors peeking through their curtains. And Tyler, he locked the door behind me like I was some kind of stranger. But here's the thing. What my son didn't know, or maybe just conveniently forgot, was that I still owned the house, completely, paid off, in my name alone. It was the house I bought after my divorce, the place I worked 2 jobs for 15 years to pay off. He moved into my home, and now he was trying to kick me out? I picked up my suitcase and shuffled to the side of the porch, trying to hide behind one of the bushes while I pulled my robe from the suitcase. Thankfully, he'd at least thrown that out. That moment, humiliating, dehumanizing, burned itself into my soul. I felt a mix of shame and fury. Shame that I had let it come to this. Fury that I'd given so much only to be treated like I was disposable. And yet, I didn't cry. Not then. Instead, I walked straight to the neighbor's house across the street, Debbie, who'd always been kind, and knocked. She opened the door, took one look at me, and said, "Honey, what happened?" "Can I borrow your phone?" I asked. "I need to call a locksmith." Because if Tyler thought this was over, he was in for a rude awakening. That same agent, who apparently had his butt in the same seat at the same time, will finally leave the building. Debbie didn't ask too many questions. That's one of the reasons I loved her. She wrapped a soft blue throw around my shoulders and handed me her cordless phone like she was passing me a sword. I dialed the locksmith I'd used years ago, Jeff at Sunrise Lock and Key. His number was still scratched on a faded sticky note inside my old wallet, just in case. He picked up on the second ring. Sunrise Lock and Key, Jeff speaking. Jeff, it's Marilyn Faulkner. I'm gonna need a full lock change, front, back, and garage. There was a pause. Marilyn, you okay? No, Jeff, but I'm about to be. He said he could be there in 20 minutes. I thanked him and set the phone down. Debbie was already pouring coffee. I don't think I stopped shaking until I felt the warm mug in my hands. That's when it hit me. This was really happening. I was about to evict my own son. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of pure necessity. The line had been crossed. "Do you want me to go over there with you?" Debbie asked, her voice soft but steady. "No," I said, "but could you walk with me to the sidewalk?" I wasn't about to march across the street like some deranged soap opera character wrapped in a towel in fury. I had my robe on now and my slippers, and what little dignity I could collect. But I wanted witnesses. I wanted the neighborhood to know I wasn't crazy. I was done being treated like a guest in my own life. We stood by the curb together, just as Jeff pulled up in his rusty white van. He gave me a knowing look and a nod, like he already understood. I unlocked the front door with the spare key from my robe pocket, a key Tyler never knew I had. I had hidden it years ago, just in case. I guess, in my gut, I always knew I'd need it someday. The door creaked open. Tyler was sitting on the couch, headset on, yelling into his gaming mic. "No, dude, she's gone. I told you. Finally got my space back." He didn't hear we come in. Not until Jeff stepped in behind me, toolbox in hand. Tyler whipped around like he'd seen a ghost. "Mom, what are you doing?" I didn't flinch. "I'm changing the locks." He stood up, the headset falling to the floor. "You can't do that. This is my house." I looked him square in the eye. "No, Tyler. This is my house, and you've just been living in it, rent-free, for 3 years. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. "You can't just kick me out. I live here." "You did live here," I said, "and you just forcibly removed the homeowner's belongings from the premises. That's trespassing. Want me to call the police and tell them what you did while I was in the shower?" His face went pale. I turned to Jeff. "Front door first, please." Tyler started pacing like a caged animal. "This is insane. You're overreacting. I just needed some space." "Then I suggest you find your own." He stormed past me, muttering something under his breath, and disappeared into the master bedroom. I could hear him throwing things into his duffel bag. Angrily, sloppily. Jeff worked quickly. By the time Tyler emerged with his things, clothes hanging from the zipper, charger dragging on the floor, the front door had a new lock and a deadbolt. He stood in the doorway, suddenly small. Where am I supposed to go? I looked at him, really looked at him. Not as the boy I raised, but as the man he'd become. A man who thought he could bully his own mother and never pay a price. "I guess you'll have to figure it out, like I did, alone, with 2 kids and a mortgage and no help from anyone." He stared at me. No apology, no tears, just disbelief. And then he was gone. I didn't cry, not until Jeff left, not until Debbie brought over a casserole and asked, gently, "You okay, hun?" I nodded, but tears slid down anyway, not because I missed him, but because I realized something bigger. I had spent the last few years begging for scraps of kindness from my own son, while he ate full meals at my table. That night, I sat alone on the couch, sipping tea and breathing in the silence of my own home. For the first time in years, the house felt still, peaceful. I should have felt guilty, but all I felt was free. And I knew this was just the beginning. Debbie didn't ask too many questions. That's one of the reasons I loved her. She wrapped a soft blue throw around my shoulders and handed me her cordless phone like she was passing me a sword. I dialed the locksmith I'd used years ago, Jeff at Sunrise Lock and Key. His number was still scratched on a faded sticky note inside my old wallet, just in case. He picked up on the second ring. Sunrise Lock and Key, Jeff speaking. Jeff, it's Marilyn Faulkner. I'm gonna need a full lock change, front, back, and garage. There was a pause. Marilyn, you okay? No, Jeff, but I'm about to be. He said he could be there in 20 minutes. I thanked him and set the phone down. Debbie was already pouring coffee. I don't think I stopped shaking until I felt the warm mug in my hands. That's when it hit me. This was really happening. I was about to evict my own son, not out of anger, not out of revenge, but out of pure necessity. The line had been crossed. Do you want me to go over there with you? Debbie asked, her voice soft but steady. No, I said, but could you walk with me to the sidewalk? I wasn't about to march across the street like some deranged soap opera character wrapped in a towel in fury. I had my robe on now and my slippers, and what little dignity I could collect. But I wanted witnesses. I wanted the neighborhood to know I wasn't crazy. I was done being treated like a guest in my own life. We stood by the curb together, just as Jeff pulled up in his rusty white van. He gave me a knowing look and a nod, like he already understood. I unlocked the front door with the spare key from my robe pocket, a key Tyler never knew I had. I had hidden it years ago, just in case. I guess, in my gut, I always knew I'd need it someday. The door creaked open. Tyler was sitting on the couch, headset on, yelling into his gaming mic. No, dude, she's gone. I told you. Finally got my space back. He didn't hear we come in. Not until Jeff stepped in behind me, toolbox in hand. Tyler whipped around like he'd seen a ghost. Mom, what are you doing? I didn't flinch. I'm changing the locks. He stood up, the headset falling to the floor. You can't do that. This is my house. I looked him square in the eye. No, Tyler. This is my house, and you've just been living in it, rent-free, for 3 years. He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried again. You can't just kick me out. I live here. You did live here, I said, and you just forcibly removed the homeowner's belongings from the premises. That's trespassing. Want me to call the police and tell them what you did while I was in the shower? His face went pale. I turned to Jeff. Front door first, please. Tyler started pacing like a caged animal. This is insane. You're overreacting. I just needed some space. Then I suggest you find your own. He stormed past me, muttering something under his breath, and disappeared into the master bedroom. I could hear him throwing things into his duffel bag. Angrily, sloppily. Jeff worked quickly. By the time Tyler emerged with his things, clothes hanging from the zipper, charger dragging on the floor, the front door had a new lock and a deadbolt. He stood in the doorway, suddenly small. Where am I supposed to go? I looked at him, really looked at him. Not as the boy I raised, but as the man he'd become. A man who thought he could bully his own mother and never pay a price. I guess you'll have to figure it out, like I did, alone, with 2 kids and a mortgage and no help from anyone. He stared at me. No apology, no tears, just disbelief. And then he was gone. I didn't cry, not until Jeff left, not until Debbie brought over a casserole and asked, gently, "You okay, hun?" I nodded, but tears slid down anyway, not because I missed him, but because I realized something bigger. I had spent the last few years begging for scraps of kindness from my own son, while he ate full meals at my table. That night, I sat alone on the couch, sipping tea and breathing in the silence of my own home. For the first time in years, the house felt still, peaceful. I should have felt guilty, but all I felt was free. And I knew this was just the beginning. I didn't sleep much that night. The house was finally quiet, No shouting from Tyler's room, no footsteps pacing the hall at 2 a.m., no microwave doors slamming at midnight. Just silence, the kind of silence I used to dream about. But peace is a funny thing. When it finally arrives, it makes room for thoughts you've been pushing away. I kept asking myself the same question. How did we get here? I raised that boy with every ounce of love I had. I sewed his Halloween costumes by hand. I stood in the rain during his Little League games. I stayed up through fevers, heartbreaks, and college rejection letters. And yet, he locked me out in a bath towel. At sunrise, I made coffee, still in my robe, and looked out the kitchen window. A breeze rustled the curtains. The house felt off. Lighter, yes, but also hollow, like something had been removed, and not just a person. That's when I decided to go into the master bedroom, my bedroom now. Tyler had left it a mess, of course. Clothes tossed everywhere, dirty plates under the bed, an energy drink can tipped over on the dresser. But on the far corner of the bed, I noticed a yellow legal pad. The first page was blank, but underneath, there was a letter. It wasn't in an envelope, just a single handwritten page folded in half. The moment I unfolded it, I recognized his handwriting, hurried, uneven, like he'd written it in frustration. "Mom, if you're reading this, I guess you went through with it. You always said you'd change the locks if I pushed too far. I guess I finally did. I know what I did was wrong. I shouldn't have thrown your things out. That was cruel, and I was angry. Not at you, not really. At myself. The truth is, I don't know how to be the man I'm supposed to be. And every time I see you, calm, strong, always managing everything, it just reminds me of how much I failed. I know I was supposed to move out a long time ago. I know I said I'd only stay for a few months. But I got stuck, and the more time passed, the harder it became to admit that I needed help, real help. I took it out on you, and I hate myself for it. I just didn't know how to ask for help without looking pathetic. So instead, I acted like I owned the place. And in doing that, I lost the only person who ever gave me everything without asking for anything back. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do hope you'll be okay. Tyler." I sat on the edge of the bed, the letter trembling in my hands. I read it once, then twice. And I cried, not because I forgave him, not yet, but because I finally saw the brokenness inside him that he'd tried so hard to cover up with anger. I had mistaken his pride for cruelty, but maybe, just maybe, it was fear. Still, it didn't excuse what he'd done. You don't get to humiliate your mother and walk away with a note. But it did change something in me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel just like a victim. I felt like a woman who had finally seen her son for who he really was, flawed, scared, ashamed, and maybe still capable of change. I folded the letter and tucked it into my nightstand drawer. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet. Maybe nothing. Maybe I'd burn it. Maybe I'd frame it. All I knew was that I wasn't ready to throw it away. That afternoon, I started clearing the bedroom, stripping the sheets, opening windows, scrubbing out the corners Tyler never touched. It wasn't just cleaning, it was reclaiming. Halfway through, I found something else, behind the headboard. An unopened envelope, addressed to him, marked from the county behavioral health office. I didn't open it. I couldn't. But the pieces started falling into place. The sleeping all day, the anger, the isolation, the way he couldn't hold down a job, couldn't manage his moods. Had he been in treatment or scheduled for an appointment he never went to? Was he struggling with something deeper all along? It made me wonder,
How many signs had I missed? In new chapter, the truth behind Tyler's letter, an unexpected phone call, and the choice I never thought I'd have to make.
The envelope from the county behavioral health office sat on my kitchen table for hours. I didn't open it. It wasn't mine to open. But it stared at me like a question I wasn't ready to answer. After everything that had happened, the yelling, the suitcase in the rain, the towel around my shoulders, I had every reason to toss that letter in the trash, to pretend I hadn't seen it. But I couldn't. Because now I knew something I hadn't known before. Tyler wasn't just selfish, he was suffering. And no amount of anger could erase the fact that he was still my child. At around 4 p.m., my phone rang. I nearly didn't answer. The number was unfamiliar, local but not saved. Hello? Hi, is this Marilyn Faulkner? Yes? This is Sharon Coleman. I'm a caseworker with County Behavioral Health. I was following up with Tyler Faulkner. He listed you as his emergency contact last month. My stomach dropped. Yes, I said carefully. What's going on? Well, she paused. Tyler missed his intake appointment 2 weeks ago. We sent a follow-up letter. I assume you found it? I did, just today. I see. He hadn't been returning calls. I was hoping maybe you knew where he was. I sat down slowly. I don't, I admitted. He left the house yesterday morning. We had a falling out. There was a long pause on the other end. Miss Faulkner, I'm not here to pry, but if he reaches out to you, please encourage him to come in. He reached out himself. That's not nothing. It takes a lot for someone like Tyler to make that first call. I felt my throat tighten. What was he being seen for? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't disclose that, she said gently, but I can tell you this. He wanted help, and people who want help usually need it more than they're able to admit. I thanked her, hung up the phone, and just sat there, silent. For years, I had wondered what had become of the boy I raised, why he had turned into this cold, entitled man who couldn't even say thank you. And now, here was the answer I'd never expected. He hadn't turned into a monster. He had been drowning. And I had been too tired, too heartbroken, too human to see it. The guilt hit me hard. But then I reminded myself, love doesn't mean tolerating abuse. You can love someone and protect yourself. You can forgive someone and still say no more. That night, I pulled out the letter he wrote me and reread it under the warm kitchen light. His words, awkward, rushed, messy, sounded different now. They didn't feel like excuses. They felt like breadcrumbs leading back to the boy I once knew. The boy who used to hug me so tight my glasses shifted on my face. That boy wasn't gone, but he was lost, and I couldn't be the one to drag him out of the forest, not anymore. I called Debbie and told her everything. She listened without interrupting once, and when I finished, she just said, "You did the right thing. Both things can be true, Marilyn. He needs help, and you need peace." We sat in silence on the phone, just two older women with a lifetime of motherhood behind us, trying to make sense of it all. The next morning, I did something I never thought I would. I called Sharon back and left a message. If Tyler reaches out again, tell him I'm not angry, but I won't let him come back until he gets help. Not to punish him, but because I love him too much to let him sink again under my roof. Then I took the envelope from the table, slid it into a manila folder, and placed it in the hall drawer. Not to forget, but to remember where the boundary now stood. Then, an unexpected knock at the door, and the visitor who forced me to face a truth even deeper than Tyler's letter. The knock came just after noon. I was in the middle of organizing the linen closet, something I hadn't touched in years, when I heard it. 3 soft raps. Not urgent, but not casual either. I paused. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked to the front door and peeked through the side window. There was a young woman on the porch, early 30s, neat dark ponytail, simple jeans, and a navy cardigan. She held a small shoulder bag and kept glancing down, like rehearsing something. I opened the door halfway. Yes? She looked up quickly, surprised. "Oh, hi, Mrs. Faulkner?" "Yes," I said slowly. "My name's Emily. I don't know if Tyler ever mentioned me. I'm I was his girlfriend, off and on for the past year." That stopped me cold. I opened the door fully. "Come in." She stepped into the foyer like someone entering a church, quiet, respectful. We sat in the living room. I noticed she kept looking around, like she'd been here before, but only through stories. "I didn't know he was seeing anyone," I finally said. She gave a small, sad smile. "That's not surprising. He was private, about everything, especially when things were bad." My chest tightened. "You said you were his girlfriend?" "Yes, I left a few weeks ago." She paused. "Actually, I left the day he got that letter from the county." My eyes locked on hers. She nodded. "He didn't open it right away, just left it on the table. But I knew what it was. He told me, months earlier, that he was trying to get evaluated for depression, mood regulation. He suspected something deeper was going on, maybe bipolar, maybe more, but he never followed through." I didn't speak. I couldn't. My hands gripped the edge of the armchair like I was holding on to a cliff. Emily continued. "I tried to help him, Mrs. Faulkner. I really did. But he didn't want help. Not from me, not from anyone. He'd swing from being the sweetest man I'd ever met to someone I barely recognized. And he refused to believe it wasn't just the world being unfair." I saw her eyes shimmer with tears she didn't let fall. Eventually, I realized I couldn't fix him, and I wasn't going to destroy myself trying. We sat in silence. A soft breeze came through the open kitchen window. The clock ticked louder than usual. "Why did you come here?" I asked, finally. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small plastic box. Inside it was a set of keys. "Because he told me to return these," she said, "and because I thought you deserved to know that it wasn't your fault." I took the box gently. My fingers brushed the cold metal keys, the spares to my house, ones I never gave him. "I found these in his glove compartment," she added. "I think he had copies made behind your back." Something in my stomach turned. I looked toward the front door. "I don't think he'd do anything dangerous," Emily said quickly, "but I thought you should know, and change the locks again, just in case." I felt both grateful and nauseated at once. "How is he now?" I asked. "I don't know," she said honestly. "Last I saw him, he was sleeping in his car behind the old strip mall off Highway 28. My hand flew to my mouth. "I didn't come to guilt you," Emily added softly. "I came because I know what it's like to carry that weight, to love someone who's falling, and to hate yourself for letting go." I didn't realize I was crying until she placed a tissue in my lap. We sat like that for a while. 2 women, both bruised in different ways by the same person, both too strong to fall apart, but too tired to pretend it hadn't hurt. Before she left, Emily said something I'll never forget. "You didn't fail him. You kept him afloat longer than most could. But at some point, it's not your job to hold the raft anymore. He has to swim." She hugged me, a warm, real hug, and then walked out into the bright afternoon sun. I stood at the door for a long time after she was gone, keys in my hand,
and a truth settling deeper than any pain I had felt before. I had done all I could, but that didn't mean the story was over. In New Chapter, a visit to the old strip mall, and the moment that shattered what little illusion I had left about my son.
I didn't plan to go. All afternoon, I tried to distract myself, folded laundry, watered the plants, even alphabetized my spice rack like some kind of domestic monk. But my thoughts kept circling back to that sentence. He was sleeping in his car behind the old strip mall off Highway 28. The strip mall was barely alive anymore. Most stores had long since gone out of business. Just a laundromat, a liquor store, and a payday loan office hanging on by a thread. That kind of place. The kind of place where people vanish. By 6 p.m., I couldn't stand it anymore. I grabbed my keys, my purse, and drove without thinking. The air was sticky, the sun sinking low and orange behind the rooftops. My heart beat louder with every passing mile. What if he's not there? What if he is? What if he doesn't want to see me? When I turned into the cracked parking lot, I slowed to a crawl. There were only 4 cars: a beat-up minivan, a delivery truck, an old white sedan, and then I saw it. His car. The silver Nissan I helped him buy 10 years ago, when he still called me Mama and held my hand when we crossed streets. It was parked crooked in the back corner, half hidden by the weeds growing through the pavement. One of the windows was cracked open. The inside was dim, but I could just make out the shape of someone slouched across the front seat. It was him. I pulled up a few spaces away and turned off the engine. I didn't get out. I just sat there, watching. His head was leaned back, mouth slightly open, arms crossed like he was hugging himself. His hair was longer than I remembered, messier, his face unshaven. There was an empty energy drink can on the dashboard and a crumpled fast food bag in the passenger seat. He looked so small, so not my Tyler. And yet, he was. I rolled the window down. The cicadas hummed. A couple of kids rode past on bikes, laughing too loud. A dog barked in the distance. The ordinary sounds of the world, continuing like nothing had changed. And then he stirred. His eyes opened, unfocused at first. Then they met mine. It took a second for recognition to register. He didn't jump up. He didn't smile. He didn't wave. He just looked at me. Not angry, not apologetic, just empty. I got out of the car slowly. My sandals crunched against gravel. I walked toward him. 10 feet. 5. I stopped beside his driver's side door. "Hi, Tyler," I said, my voice careful. He said nothing. "You okay?" He blinked, nodded once, but I saw the truth. In the way his shoulders sagged, in the way he couldn't meet my eyes for more than a second. "You're sleeping out here?" Another nod. Silence stretched between us like a wall neither of us wanted to climb. "I didn't come to yell," I said. "I didn't come to take you home." He finally looked at me. "I know," he said. His voice was hoarse, like he hadn't spoken in days. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded slip of paper, Sharon Coleman's number, the county caseworker. "I'm not going to push," I said, "but this is help, if you want it." He didn't take it. I laid it gently on the windshield. Then I added, "You were right in your letter, about everything. You're not a failure, Tyler, but you are lost, and you can't stay lost forever." He didn't cry. Neither did I. There was nothing left to cry, just a quiet ache, like a bruise that wouldn't fade. I turned to walk away. And then, behind me, I heard him. "Mom." I stopped. "Thanks for not kicking me when I was already down." I looked back. "I almost did," I said, "but I remembered who raised me, and she wouldn't have let me." He gave the faintest smile, and I walked away.
Not because I stopped caring, but because sometimes the most loving thing you can do is leave someone exactly where they are until they're ready to rise on their own. In New Chapter, a call from Sharon changes everything. Tyler finally makes a move, but not the one I expected.
2 days passed. The house was quiet again, but not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful. It was the kind of silence that hums, like the air before a thunderstorm. Nothing visible yet, but something moving underneath. I found myself checking my phone more than usual, not because I expected a call, but because I knew if it came, it would mean something had shifted. And then, one morning, it did. I was trimming the lavender in the front yard when my phone rang. Unknown number. I froze. Picked it up with garden gloves still on. Hello? Mrs. Faulkner, this is Sharon Coleman. I stood up straighter. Yes, I said. Hi. She didn't rush. I just wanted to let you know, Tyler came in today. I didn't realize I was holding my breath until that moment. He walked in on his own, she continued, no prompting, just showed up at 9:15 and asked to speak to someone. My knees nearly gave out. Is he okay? I asked. He's quiet, but he's here. We've started a soft intake process. He's agreed to a preliminary evaluation and short-term crisis housing. It's not much, but it's safe, stable. He'll be off the streets for a while. I turned and looked at the porch steps, the ones he used to sit on when he was 6, eating popsicles with red stains on his shirt. He said something I thought you'd want to hear, Sharon added. I held the phone tighter. He said, I think I scared my mom too much this time, but she still showed up, so maybe it's time I do the same. I sank down onto the porch bench. Tears welled up behind my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. Not yet. Thank you, I whispered. You don't have to thank me, she said. You gave him the push and the space. That's not easy. Most parents only manage one. We hung up, and I sat there for a long time, letting the sun warm my arms, letting the silence settle over me. But this time, it didn't hum with fear. It breathed. Tyler wasn't healed, not yet, but he had taken the first step, the one no one could take for him. That evening, I lit a candle at the kitchen table. No occasion, no guests, just me and the flame, and a deep sense of something I hadn't felt in years, hope. Later, I opened the hall drawer and pulled out his letter again. I read it under the soft kitchen light one more time, and then, finally, I tucked it away into a wooden keepsake box with a new label, Not the End. In New Chapter, a message from Tyler arrives, but not the one she expected, and it changes everything about how she sees what comes next. 3 days passed without a word. I didn't expect anything right away. I knew better. Healing isn't a straight line. It's more like a spiral staircase. Sometimes it feels like you're going in circles until you look down and realize how far you've climbed. But on the 4th morning, I saw the envelope. It was in my mailbox, handwritten, no return address, just one word across the front. Mom. My breath caught. I walked back inside, sat at the kitchen table, and held the envelope in my lap. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with something deeper, that familiar mix of dread and longing only mothers know. When I opened it, a single sheet of paper slipped out. It wasn't a long letter. Just a few lines, scrawled in blue ink, his handwriting still uneven and restless. I'm still not ready to come home, but I'm ready to come clean. I wasn't just angry. I was scared you'd see who I really was, but you looked anyway and stayed. That's love. I didn't deserve it. I still don't, but I want to. T. I read it twice, then a third time. It wasn't an apology. It was a confession. And somehow, that meant more. Because sorry can be easy. Sorry is often a door people knock on, hoping you'll open it and pretend nothing ever happened. But this was something else. This was ownership. This was growth. And it shattered something inside me I didn't even know was still hard. I held the letter to my chest and just breathed. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like a broken mother trying to fix a broken child. I felt like a woman who had built a boundary and now, maybe, was building a bridge. I didn't reply. Not yet. Instead, I went to the garage, pulled out a storage bin I hadn't touched in years, and found the old photo albums. The ones from when Tyler still had gap teeth and scraped knees and used to leave me little notes on napkins. One fell out between the pages. "Don't forget to smile today, Mom. Crayon, age 9. I smiled, and I remembered something my own mother once said when I was going through my divorce. Sometimes you don't fight for them. You fight for the chance they might one day fight for themselves. That night, I lit another candle. Same table, same flame. But this time, the hope was bigger. It wasn't just that Tyler had written. It was that he hadn't asked me to save him. He'd simply let me see him. And that, I realized, was the first real gift he'd given me in years. 10x. In new chapter, a visit I didn't expect and a choice I never thought I'd have to make. Tyler asks for something I'm not sure I'm ready to give. It was a Sunday morning when he came. I hadn't heard the doorbell ring in over 2 weeks. Most of my friends called first. Debbie just walked in, and I wasn't expecting any deliveries. I was standing at the stove, flipping pancakes, when the chime echoed through the house. I froze. Not in fear, in knowing. I turned off the burner, wiped my hands, and walked slowly to the door. Through the frosted glass, I saw the silhouette. Broad shoulders, slouched posture, hands in pockets. Familiar in a way only a mother would recognize. I opened the door, and there he was. Tyler. Thinner, paler, his beard trimmed but still rough, clothes clean though wrinkled, eyes tired but clear. He looked like a man who'd been through something and had decided not to run from it. "Hi," he said softly. "Hi," I replied. We stood in silence for a moment. Not awkward silence, just full. "Can I come in?" I hesitated. Not to hurt him, not out of spite, but because the door wasn't just wood and hinges anymore. It was a symbol, a boundary I had fought hard to rebuild. "Why are you here, Tyler?" He swallowed. "Not to move back in." I nodded, waiting. "I'm staying at the facility. They gave me a counselor, and I've been meeting with her twice a week. Group therapy, too. They said I'm doing the work, slowly." "That's good," I said. He nodded. His eyes flicked toward the sidewalk, then back up. "I'm not here to talk about me," he added. "I'm here to ask for something." That surprised me. "Ask away." He took a deep breath. "I'd like to go through Dad's things, in the attic. You said you kept everything after he passed." My chest tightened. My late husband, Mark, had been gone for almost 12 years. Tyler had barely spoken about him since the funeral. I always assumed it hurt too much. "I think I need to remember where I came from," he said. "Who I was, before everything got so dark." I didn't speak. Not right away. I looked at him, really looked, at the slight shake in his hands, the vulnerability in his eyes. And I realized this wasn't about stuff. This was about roots, about trying to anchor himself to something real before he drifted too far again.
Finally, I stepped aside. "You can come in, but just for that, the attic." He nodded. "That's all I need." We walked upstairs together, the way we hadn't done in years. I led him to the pull-down ladder and handed him a flashlight. "Boxes are on the left. Mark's name is on them." He climbed, slowly, carefully. I didn't follow. Instead, I sat on the hallway bench outside the linen closet and listened. I heard cardboard sliding, lids opening, then something softer, the rustle of photographs. 20 minutes passed, then 30. When he came down, he held a single shoebox. "Just this," he said. Inside were old letters, a pair of cufflinks, and a faded Little League cap, the one Mark used to wear to every game. He didn't ask to keep it. He didn't ask for tea. He didn't even ask to sit. He just said, "Thanks for letting me look." I walked him to the door. Before he stepped outside, he turned to me. "I don't expect anything, Mom. Not now, maybe not ever. But if one day you decide to come see how I'm doing, well, I think I'll still be there, trying." I nodded. He smiled. And then he left. I stood in the doorway for a long time, the morning sun warming my arms. The pancakes on the stove had gone cold, but something else, something deeper, had begun to warm again. Not everything broken needs to be thrown away. Sometimes it just needs to be seen and chosen again, piece by piece. In New Chapter, months pass. Tyler takes a step I never imagined, and I'm asked to speak somewhere I never expected to be invited.
Fall came. The maple tree in my front yard turned gold so fast, it felt like I blinked and summer vanished. I started baking again, cinnamon bread, apple pie, the kind of things I hadn't made in years because no one had been home to eat them. And I was okay. Not just surviving, living. I planted mums in the front garden, took a yoga class with Debbie, joined a book club, though I mostly went for the snacks and the gossip. There were still quiet nights when I thought of Tyler, when I wondered where he was sleeping, what he was eating, whether he'd made it past that first fragile phase of recovery. But I didn't reach out, and he didn't call. Until late November. It was the Monday before Thanksgiving. I had just taken a cranberry loaf out of the oven when the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number. "Mrs. Faulkner?" the woman said. "This is Joan. I'm one of the program coordinators at the County Recovery Center." My heart skipped. "Yes? I'm calling because Tyler asked us to invite you to something, if you're willing." I sat down at the kitchen table, oven mitts still on. "What kind of something?" "Well," she said warmly, "he's finishing his first phase, 90 days clean, stable housing, completed therapy block. We hold a small circle for people who've reached that milestone. We call it a regrounding ceremony. It's not public, just close supporters." My throat tightened. He said he wanted to thank someone, specifically you. I couldn't speak. "I'll text you the address," she said gently. "It's this Friday, noon. You're under no obligation, of course." But I was already nodding. After we hung up, I sat there in silence. Then I did something I hadn't done in years. I went into my bedroom closet and pulled out the blue scarf my mother gave me before she passed, the one I only wore on days that really mattered. Friday came. The center was modest, just a brick building off the freeway with a small community room that smelled faintly of coffee and hope. There were 12 chairs in a circle, 10 filled, and one at the far side, by a window, held Tyler. He stood when I entered. He didn't rush over. He didn't cry. He just smiled. And that meant more than tears ever could. I sat beside him. The ceremony wasn't fancy. No candles, no music, no speeches, just people telling the truth. When it was Tyler's turn, he cleared his throat and said, "My name's Tyler. I used to think getting clean meant I had to fix everything I broke, but now I know
It just means learning how to hold what's still left and not drop it again." Then he looked at me. I dropped a lot, but one person stayed, even when I made her leave. So today, I just want to say thank you for showing up, for setting the boundary, for not rescuing me. I don't remember crying, but when it was over, his counselor hugged me and whispered, "You helped him get here, just by letting go." We left the center side by side, not arms linked, not hand in hand, but walking at the same pace. And that, in its own way, was everything. Then, in new chapter, an unexpected Thanksgiving at my house, a surprising guest, and the dinner that turned into something far bigger than I imagined. Thanksgiving morning came with frost on the windows and coffee warming my hands. I hadn't planned to cook. It was supposed to be a quiet day, just me, a blanket, and one of those Hallmark movies where everyone ends up under twinkle lights and mistletoe. But then, at 8:42 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text. "Hey, would it be weird if I brought a pie and just sat at your table for a while? No pressure, just, I'd like to be near you today. T." I stared at the screen. A pie. Just a seat? No demands, no drama, just presence. I typed back slowly. "You can bring a pie, but you're also bringing your own plate, napkin, and folding chair. Deal?" Seconds later, deal. I smiled to myself. And then I really smiled, the kind that rises from your chest like a balloon that finally broke loose. I opened a pantry, pulled out the emergency stuffing mix I kept just in case, and set to work. 2 hours later, the smell of roasted turkey filled the house. Cranberry sauce chilled in the fridge, candles were lit, and by noon, the table was modest but warm. 2 place settings, folded napkins, pumpkin pie from the store, still in its plastic clamshell. At 12:17, there was a knock. I opened the door, and there he was. Tyler. No suit, no big speech, just jeans, a clean sweater, and a nervous smile, like he wasn't sure if he belonged. He held up the pie like a peace offering. "Store-bought," he admitted. "Reckless," I replied. "Come in." He stepped inside and looked around like it was a place he used to dream about. Not just a house, but a feeling. Something he thought he'd lost forever. We sat. We ate. At first, it was quiet, polite, careful, like dancing with a new partner who used to step on your toes. But halfway through dinner, Tyler asked, "Remember the year you burned the turkey and we ate scrambled eggs?" I blinked, then laughed. "I made the stuffing in the microwave. You cried because there was no gravy." He grinned. "I was 11 and dramatic." "You were 11 and hungry," I said, "and I forgot to defrost the bird." We laughed. Real laughter. Not forced, not fragile, just 2 people remembering when life was messy but still sweet. After pie, Tyler leaned back and looked around the room. "You changed the curtains. Debbie said the old ones made me look like a widow in hiding." He smiled, then hesitated. "I've been journaling," he said. "One of the exercises is writing a letter to the people we hurt, not to give it to them, just to write it." My hands paused over the coffee cups. "I wrote yours," he continued, "twice." I waited. He looked down. "But then I realized maybe the real letter is just sitting here, with you, eating pie." I nodded. "That's enough for today," I said softly. He exhaled like I'd released him from something invisible. As the sun dipped low and golden across the dining room table, I noticed something I hadn't seen in a long time. My son. Not the boy I raised, not the man who broke me, but the person he was now. Flawed, healing, trying. And somehow, enough. When he left, he hugged me at the door. Not a quick, embarrassed squeeze, a real hug. And when I closed the door behind him, I didn't cry. I just whispered, "Thank you," into the quiet house. Because this year, that seat at my table wasn't just full. It was earned. And now, in New Chapter, a letter arrives from the recovery center. Not from Tyler, but about him. And what it says gives me the most unexpected piece of all.
It came in a plain envelope. No stamp. Just hand-delivered by someone from the county recovery center. I almost mistook it for junk mail until I saw the logo in the top left corner. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Typed, formal, but it said more than I expected. Dear Mrs. Faulkner, we are writing to inform you that Tyler Faulkner has successfully completed Phase 2 of our recovery program, including individual therapy, group work, and community volunteer hours. He has chosen to remain enrolled for long-term support and will begin mentoring other participants in January. At his request, we are forwarding this note on his behalf. A second piece of paper was tucked behind it. This one, handwritten, Tyler's familiar, awkward script. I didn't want to say this at Thanksgiving. It felt too big. But here it is. You were right to close the door. You were right to make me knock. You were right to wait. And thank you for opening it again. T. I sat at the table for a long time, the note open beside my teacup. There were no tears this time. Just stillness. Warm, deep stillness. I ran my fingers over the paper, not because I needed to reread it, but because some part of me wanted to feel the weight of the ink, the pressure of the pen, proof that he had written it by hand, proof that it was real. For so long, I had defined motherhood by doing, by cooking, cleaning, helping, giving. But this year taught me something harder. Sometimes, the most loving thing a mother can do is step back. Sometimes, love looks like silence. Sometimes, love looks like the front door staying closed until the knock is real. That afternoon, I went to the attic. I found the old photo of Tyler at 5 years old, covered in finger paint, holding up a messy canvas with a proud grin. I framed it, not as a memory of the past, but as a reminder. Healing is messy. Life is messy. And sometimes the greatest art comes from the ugliest colors. I placed the frame on the hallway table, right by the door, because now, every time I leave the house, I want to remember what it took to let him come back in. Not with guilt, not with fear, but with choice. And that, I've learned, is the quietest, strongest kind of love there is. If this story touched you, leave a comment, share where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe. Every mother deserves to know she's not alone.